Folks, it's 1 o'clock. I'm calling the meeting of the Finance and Planning Committee to order. It's a formality, but we do have a quorum today. I'm going to read the disclaimer statement. Official recordings, videos, or transcriptions of the HSVPOA committee meetings and/or board meetings will be done by authorized personnel only and can be viewed on the HSVPOA Association YouTube channel and explorethevillage.com. Any other recordings, video, transcriptions of HSVPOA committee meetings and/or board meetings is not considered the official record of the HSV Property Owners Association meetings and/or board meetings. Okay. I'm hoping that most, if not everyone, got a copy of the agenda, but first item on the agenda is approval of the previous meeting minutes. Are there any comments or discussions about the meeting minutes?
If you want me to take out that you did the budget guidance, I will.
Leave it in there. I'm working on it. With that, do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so approved. Review and approval of today's agenda. Everybody received, I hope, the copy of the agenda. Any comments, additions, corrections, deletions, blah, blah, blah? If no discussion, do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. So approved. First thing is the introduction of two new guests, or not guests, committee members, although they have not yet been approved by the board. We assume that that will be happening. Becky DeYoung and Ford Williams. With that, I would just ask, starting with Becky, just quick introduction.
I hesitate because where do I start? I have been, what I bring is some experience. I have been on POA committees, either a member of a committee or the chair of a committee, since probably 25 years ago. And those committees include Strategic Planning, Finance Committee, Lakes Committee, Election Committee, a whole slew of them. In the past, since about 2003, 2004, I've spent 11 and a half years, not consecutively, but in two different blocks of time, serving as a director on a POA board where I came from in Michigan, which is so much like this one that it is funny. Same challenges, people are the same, finances are the same, it just is a fifth the size. And so I have a fair amount of experience over the past number of years. And frankly, it really took about a chunk of my time. And since 2016, I've been attending the board meetings here in the village when I was a snowbird down here. So we would live in Michigan in the summertime, we'd come down here in the wintertime, and it was so close I kind of had to flip a coin, where did I want to declare residency? And so I have some knowledge, not as much knowledge as I would like to have, about hot springs. I've got a lot of knowledge about what is involved in the governing of a POA. And so that kind of wraps it up. As far as education, mechanical engineer, worked for General Motors in fuel injection for almost all of my other life. And so that kind of is where I came from. And we sold our property in Michigan last August and moved here as full-time residents and said goodbye to Michigan and the connections there. And now it's 100% here. And I'm trying to get used to this temperature.
It cooled down this week, though.
Pardon me?
It cooled down this week.
Yes, and it's amazing. We walked out of a restaurant yesterday and it was like 92 degrees. I turned to my husband and said, "Isn't this nice? It's cool."
Okay, thank you and welcome. Ford?
I'm Ford Williams. I'm a longtime visitor to the village. I've been coming here since the early 80s, since I started dating my wife. They bought property here on one of the Cooper tours in 1975 and have lived here since 1995. And then my wife and I moved here in April of last year, so we've been here, I guess, about 18 months as residents. CPA, spent 40 years between KPMG and Ernst & Young in the accounting profession. I've retired and had an interest in finances of the village, and especially since we moved here, I started paying more attention to it, and all the future revenue task force items and that sort of thing really kind of piqued my interest, and I thought I might be able to provide some help or insight where I could, and just thrilled to be part of the committee.
Okay, thank you very much, Ford, and I hope we can keep you entertained. With that, I think we want to start getting into the meat of the agenda. Meat being an interesting word because we have 10 minutes allocated to this topic. Final feedback for emergency reserve fund. Carl has been doing the brunt of the work there, so with that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Carl. Just tell us where we're at.
So we got 10 minutes, all right?
Well, we'll take
keep it
whatever
there.
time we need to, but a lot to me has changed in the last week. And
Yeah.
Go
So,
ahead.
I don't know if Ford or Becky, if y'all need a copy of the last draft.
Look like this?
Ford probably needs it.
Yeah.
I think it was in one of my emails.
Okay. Well, we'd been working on this, revising and updating the policy for a while now, and thought we got it to a point where we could present it to the board and staff for approval or changes or whatnot. And I think for the most part, it looked good. There was a question about the operating reserve. And I'd asked the question, I wasn't sure about the history of the timing and whatnot. And then Karina had brought up the question or the comment about the line of credit, part of that reserve, but at the same time, it is used, it's the investment account, the Cetera accounts, is being used as collateral for that line of credit. Now, what's done is done. You had also made the comment about you may be able to waive the collateral on that. And so I think we just had some questions, I did anyway, of one is until we get that waiver, is the line of credit and the Cetera, just, it seems like you're double dipping as far as what I understand about line of credits, especially if you're using cash as collateral, is if you're borrowing the line, that just reduces your cash available to use as collateral.
So the way it's structured is, for example, when you go out and you get a loan on your home, okay, it's collateral. It's if you default, that's when they're gonna come back for the collateral. So to Tom's question of, if we borrowed $500,000 against it, does the other part have a holding of that? It doesn't work necessarily like that. It truly is, okay, you've got Cetera investments, and then, am I echoing? Sorry. You got your Cetera investments, which is used as collateral against the line of credit. You could fully draw on that line of credit, and as long as you are making the required payments and such, it's not gonna affect your Cetera piece. Now, as far as the double part that you're referring to, yes, that kind of does apply. The other part of this is the operating reserve is not an actual operating reserve. It's, okay, if crap hits the fan, we've got this that we can draw out of. So they've had that listed, but it's never actually been specifically set aside. So when you're doing your reserves and what you're gonna fund and all that stuff, it's really the other two that have already existed. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't need to set something up, which is why I made the statement, when it comes to year end and all the allocations, I said, you can't move everything out of our operating account, we need the cash flow. That is why. Now, all that being said, we are trying to see if they can run it and it doesn't affect our risk rating and so forth, to remove that collateral. And one of the reasons that they're also looking into that for us is because they know we were looking at any of our other investment options, which would then free that up if we were to do something on the region's investment side. So does that help kind of clear
I mean,
what
I
some of those questions were?
think it clears up to me anyway, if what you're saying is it doesn't, you could draw $1 million on it, you'd still have the $1.5 million available in the Cetera account to use.
It is still there, yes. Now, the double
With
dipping,
no
like,
restrictions on using it.
well, that's what I'm saying though, like you're saying, it is kind of a double dip there. But the only place you ever see that operating reserve part is in that summary sheet you guys got. It's not on the balance sheet, it's not anywhere. The line of credit is not on the balance sheet
Right. It's just
because there's no
expanded.
balance.
Right.
So, yes, it's a double dip when you consider it that way. That's why I say it needs to be reevaluated. But it's not collateral in the way that Tom was asking.
Well, okay, just to make things as clear as I can in my mind, because I realize this is complicated. If we draw on the line of credit, we then cannot sell and turn into cash the 1.5 million. Neither can they, I mean, they're not going to. I don't know whether they can or they can't, but I suspect they can't until they have to.
Right.
And I don't know. But one of our policies, in the board policy, it says operating reserves has to be, more or less, has to be 2.5 million. And I cannot look at the 1 million of line of credit, 2.5 million, add them together and say, yes, we are compliant with operating reserves being equal to 1 month's
You are correct.
expense.
You are correct in that statement.
Yeah,
That's why I
but-
said it's not even an actual policy. The only place you ever see it is on that one sheet
Right.
that's going through and saying, okay, did we hit our max? And it's just a worksheet piece.
Right.
That's, comes back to why I've said you can't take everything out of your operating account. That's really
Right.
where your reserve really is sitting.
Correct.
And it's just not identified.
But
Should reserves in general be in a separate account, if you're calling it a reserve?
Yes, you're correct. However, that is the only one that is structured completely different. Now, I cannot tell you exactly why it was structured that way 5 years ago because I wasn't here. I can tell you is what they did. That being said, we have not typically been historically at a point to where we could take all of that operating reserve and actually set it aside because we're actually using it all the time. We've just now, in the last 2 years, come into a position where we actually have a true high cash balance.
okay.
So is the Cetera account, which is 1.5 million, and then this number we see on this paper, 1.5 million, are they one and the same or no? You're saying, I kind of hear no, it's not. It's the 1.5 million, doesn't matter where it is. It's either in the Cetera, it's in the operating cash. It's just cash there in one of the accounts.
Say that again, I apologize.
I'm just saying, the Cetera is not necessarily tied to this operating
No,
reserve number.
it is, the Cetera is tied to your operating reserve number in order to get to that 2.5. The line of credit is the other part, so that's where I'm saying it doesn't quite add up, like you're saying.
Okay. Trying to play my role as the keeper of the agenda. I don't see us fully resolving this issue today if we want to really get to the budget issues. I mean, we're allocated 10 minutes. I mean, we've hit 10 minutes already.
Yeah.
And other than being a fairly complicated issue with lots of nuances, I mean, how does the rest of the committee feel about this? Or you're kind of lost.
I just have kind of one question to make sure I completely understand. I think what you're saying is, under the current terms of a line of credit, if we were to borrow $1 million, we would have to maintain $1 million of collateral. No?
No.
That's what she's saying, that's not true. That's the way we all would think about it, but
Then what's
Regions
the
is
point of
not.
having collateral if it's not there to support the borrowing?
If you're,
Yeah.
if you're past due,
It's
if
if-
you're past due, then that collateral can be used. But, I mean, there can be used. But if you borrow $1.5 million, you can't liquidate the other because it is collateral for that. So you're right.
Well, I
It
think
is
I think
big.
that's what I just said,
Yeah.
that you have to maintain a balance equal to your draw on the line. No?
No, you just can't use it.
Which is just
Which is the
a
same
rose
thing.
like
It's
any
the
other
same
day.
thing.
Yeah, and that's where the confusion comes in. We're all saying the same thing in
Okay.
different ways.
That's the same thing.
But, I mean, I keep going back to the,
In reality, you
Yeah.
have 1.5 million that is
yeah,
available, or 1 million that is available for your reserve. If you really want to look at it, you got the line of credit. You
okay.
can't use the other part
Um,
until we get it removed as
You could
collateral.
use 1.5, but
It's 1.5 for Soterra,
Yeah.
which backs the $1 million line of credit.
So you can't add the two together.
No,
Because
that's what I'm saying. That's where that double
If you drew on
dip
the
is.
line,
Correct.
if you drew on the line, you could not then use the other money
Correct.
for.
Right.
Right.
Which is where that double dip part
Thank
comes
you,
in.
I'm clear now.
Well,
I guess the question I have, though, is, well, I got two questions. The first question is to clarify the comment that you made, okay? Is the 1.5 million in the Cetera account an emergency reserve, or are you using it day in and day out, which would not be an emergency reserve?
We do not touch it.
You do not touch it. So it is truly an emergency reserve. If we came into a cash problem, that's where you would go for your money, for operating.
Yes. However, it would negatively affect the fact that it's what backs the line of credit. So,
Yeah, I don't really care about the line of credit, because I think the line of credit, based on our conversation, is smoke and mirrors, because it really doesn't add any
Yeah.
value to to our organization, because we would have to keep whatever we
Yes.
borrowed, we'd have to keep in the reserve, which means it doesn't really add, it's not an additive, it's actually a negative if we were to use the line of credit.
yes, so if you
I
separate,
only want to talk about the 1.5.
Right.
And I want to say, is the 1.5 truly a emergency reserve, or are you using it day in and day out?
we do not use it. It truly is sitting there.
Okay?
So that's why I said, if you separate the two and there's no connection there, yes, all else fails, we could go and pull all of that.
Yeah.
Which is why if we get it removed as collateral, you have that availability.
But there's
So
no need
does
to
it-
have.
But there
it
shouldn't be a
collateral if you
restriction
don't.
on the collateral to the 1 point line of credit. If we never use it, we can start using the 1.5 million and not worry about the 1 million, right?
Correct.
Okay.
You'd probably get rid of
Yeah.
that other availability.
Right.
That's what I'm saying, if you disconnect those lines, yes,
Yeah,
what you're saying is
okay.
correct.
I'm sorry. So then my second question is, what I think I'm hearing you say is 1.5 million is not the right number. That's way too low.
Correct.
It's not 1 month's worth of operating expenses.
Correct.
And the 1 million collateral, we just had the discussion that it's double dipping, it really doesn't add, it's not additive. So in reality, we need to add $1 million to the operating reserve for, to be at the right number.
Technically, yes.
Yeah. And was it back in 2017, whatever it was, that the number was set at 2.5 million?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's why when I just quickly, and I didn't take a trend or anything, all I did was pull up July's financial, and we ran about 3 million. And we know we're way under in our payroll expenses and so forth, so if we were fully operating, it would be a little bit more than that would qualify as your 1 month. Now, trending, yeah, it would change that a little bit, but if you took a 12-month average.
So it seemed like that if we go back to this chart for this reserve purposes, that first column of the target is supposed to be 2.5 million, but truly funded part is only 1.5, and maybe there's some change to that. Is
That sounds right
correct?
to me.
Okay.
And then the question, I guess, would be is, in this policy, is 1.5 the right number that should be in that block? Or if we know today, since we're writing the policy today, that it needs to be somewhere in the 2.5 to 3 million range, then that we know that that's the number that should go in there, and we know we're short of it. And we have to start building.
Mhm.
Okay.
And is it
I
within
don't
our
disagree
power?
with anything I heard.
Which is why I've said with the way our cash flow has been in the past,
Yeah.
that's where your difference was made up. You didn't have it to move.
Well,
You were
yeah.
using it.
Yeah, I mean, the two issues there, at least recently, we've been, quote, cash rich, thank goodness. But the policy strongly implies, if not flat out says, money sloshing around in the operating cash doesn't count. It's operating cash. It demands segregation.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
What they set up several years ago,
Well,
it doesn't match what's actually set up. The
I
sheet doesn't match
agree.
what is there.
okay.
And then my only other point would be is, I think based on that, what we just learned about collateral and all that kind of stuff, I think we need to strike in the reserve policy any mention of the 1 million line of credit, because it's, as you guys said, it's double dipping, and it is actually not additive.
Well, the thing is, it's under
I mean, that,
review, and if it becomes essentially some other form without the collateralization of the operating reserve, then there's probably an argument to say it could be in there. But that's some future event.
Well, that was kind of part B of my question was, did I also hear that there's maybe some negotiation going on with the lender to drop the collateral requirement or substitute some other illiquid collateral?
To just remove it, period.
Okay.
Yeah, but that may
I
not
mean, if you
occur.
remove the collateral requirement, then it would,
Then you do
then you
have
do
both
add it
pieces.
together and.
Yeah, okay.
We probably need to know what the, I mean, when they say
Interest rate.
remove, they're probably not completely, they're looking at something.
Sure, I mean, they're gonna want something, so,
They have
Yeah.
to.
that's why I'm, by substitute, maybe an illiquid collateral
Yeah.
like lots or
Let me
equipment.
let me give you,
Yeah.
Something that would satisfy examiners.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear from Karina, but I might be mishearing, is if they're looking at it being unsecured line of credit,
correct.
which to me would be amazing that, Regions would do it, but who knows?
Unless they're counting on us keeping the other
The rest of the
investments
investments.
in their account.
But I still don't think that would satisfy examiners on their part. They need something, at
You
least
would think.
500 of it,
Right.
more tangible.
I mean, I don't view that as a committee issue at this time.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a significant concern tied into this discussion. So it sounds like we more or less started out not understanding the issue. We've pretty much coalesced around the little campfire. We kind of understand the issue. The other issue I have, and I'm not sure what to do about this, is one of our obligations is to notify the board of financial concerns. Is this something that this committee feels we need to notify the board? And of course, Gary is sitting right there, so he's been listening to this.
The concern being the 2.5 million target versus
Where
1.5
we-
million funded, or?
If you were to ask me a week ago, have we complied with the 2.5 million? I'd have said yes, 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 for multiple years. And after the last 20 minutes, I think we all agree the answer is no. And is this something that is worthwhile notifying the board with, or we had the discussion, we're happy with with our understanding, and that's it. End of discussion, we just proceed. So is this a board notification event or not?
But if we have uncovered a problem, with the policies, then my suggestion is we come up with an offered solution. To take this entire discussion to the board would, I don't
No,
think, you don't need that. What we need is if we've uncovered a problem, then let's come up with an
Well,
offered
yeah.
solution.
Okay, that's a very good suggestion. What I'm saying is, I think my understanding, and I assume the board's understanding, was we have been compliant with the $2.5 million target for multiple years. This committee now thinks that is not the case, and I guess the job of staff and the general manager and the controller is to investigate how we resolve that. I mean, I think one is just take $1 million that we got now, hack it off and stick it aside. The other is, we're renegotiating the collateral arrangement, and that is a possible solution. I don't know that this committee can come up quickly with a solution, because ultimately, staff has to execute it. And whatever essentially they say, yeah, we can do this, then that's fine. I mean, like I said, we're lucky, right now we're cash rich. But it's not like we don't have lots and lots of ideas of what we would like to do with the cash. This is, and from where I sit, an unpleasant surprise, but tough.
Well,
It happens.
Now,
It may be that their understanding was different when they set it up and said that the 2.5 covered it.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, they probably were assuming you could use both, not realizing
We can't.
the setup
Right.
of it. But, like I said, if we can, once this is done and if it is removed, then we are in compliance without moving
Right.
the $1 million
But-
out of operating.
Yeah.
yeah, one question on that. If it does become unsecured, like you said, it becomes part of the 2.5. But I guess, just to make myself clear, use of that line of credit would only be used as defined in this policy.
If that's what we end up doing, then absolutely yes.
Okay. That-
I like what Gary said, but that doesn't resolve the issue of, does this committee feel any obligation to, on some formal basis, inform the board of what we found?
It seems to me it might be preliminary or too soon to inform the board. I'd like to see if they could accept another form of collateral first. Seems like that could be resolved in 2 or 3 weeks. Like, would you accept a mortgage on the Woodlands or something of that nature as collateral instead of the Cetera fund? And then it resolves the issue, doesn't it? Is that naive?
It should.
Yeah,
Your problem is, yes, you technically were not in compliance for the last 5 years, but if this is executed the way it's supposed to, then we will be in compliance. Now, if you want to go and bring that up to the board for the history, then by all means. That's what you're asking, right? That's what you're asking, right? Because even if we address
Essentially-
the issue now, is it, you're wanting to see, do we need to bring up that it was an issue?
yeah. I mean, that's the question. I mean, it's in our charter. I read the charter, I say, okay, this is something we may want to or not want to. It's up to the committee.
The bank, I will let you know in communication with her, just interjecting and I apologize. But it says, based on the logic of the request of the potential removal of the Cetera collateral off of a few things. One, the importance was to free up more funds that you could possibly aggregate to take advantage of corporate investment type services because you would have more money to pool. 2, I looked at the stability of the POA financially. You guys have really begun to build your strength in your balance sheet and increase your cash flows. 3, the longevity of our relationship together. And 4, the fact that you guys have never drawn on the line of credit and have the ability to pay us back with cash reserves as needed. And finally, because it appears to me that you guys could support a 5-year term out in a worst case scenario if you had to fully extend the line to pay back the principal and interest of the loan, which is why she's saying we could get it without collateral, most likely.
Problem solved.
Jeff, did you have something to say?
I was just gonna say, I think for notification of the board, I mean, Gary's now advised of this potential issue, and he can choose to tell the rest of the board members or not, as we let this play out and figure out what that's going, that would be my suggestion.
I would agree with that.
What is the fee on the line of credit?
All we have is our renewal fee, which I want to, shooting from the hip, it's like $1,200.
Okay.
We don't draw on it, so there's no interest or anything else that's associated.
Okay, so at this point, Becky?
I'll try to be quick. I didn't get to join the discussion last meeting, so I'll try to put everything in here real quickly. The first thing, I'm going to start with 2 questions. Karina, who do you report to? Who do you report to?
Me, the board.
Which leads me right to what I was going to. Under the definition and goals, it says ongoing management is to be delegated to the controller, who doesn't report to the board. I think that this should be changed to ongoing management is designated to the general manager, who does report to the board.
Well, Karina is also the treasurer. Who does
I
report
know
to the
that,
board.
and then it's his, and he would logically then go back to Karina, but Karina's responsibility is not to the board. The general manager's responsibility is to the board, and this is, to me, a policy that the board has to back up, they have to be behind. It's a board issue, that's what a board does, policy. And so that's one change I would suggest making is to put the responsibility to the person who is responsible to the board. My next thing is, we made a huge change in the purpose of the same Chapter 1, Article 10 funding. I'm not disagreeing with the need for this, but I see a need for the original purpose, for the original funding, which was to do a completely different purpose. And so my question is, do we then just trash? Does the board trash the original purpose of a reserve fund and supplement it with this one? So it's a philosophical question.
That's why they created the utility capital fund and the non-utility capital fund to address that specific issue.
Separate
But they're
from
to be
this-
used-
Separate from this.
policy.
But, I mean, they're to be used differently if you look at the 2 funding proposals here. And I really believe the organization needs both purposes, but you've only got limited amount of money.
Well, right,
So that's,
Carl never really got to the issue, which really is the next step, which is documentation of the policy surrounding the not emergency part.
yeah, so I would see
Yeah.
the next step is to go back to what the purpose was of it originally.
That's
I mean-
about correct.
We need to have emergency fund, but we need to also have the types of funding that are described in what had been this policy.
Yeah, that's the
And
next
so
step.
it is a
That's the
major
next
That's the
step.
next
That's
piece of it.
That's the capital
Yeah.
working fund and the non-capital working fund.
And I think that needs to be at the forefront of any discussion and any decision on it, that we are not trashing one, we've got a plan. Our plan is to get this funded, then our plan is to go back and pick up what we dropped when we changed the name and purpose of the funds. So those are 2 of my questions. The third one goes right back to what Jeff brought up. These figures are a little bit low. We talked about how low it is for the 1-month average operating cost, and talked about, that is going to be a challenge. But the other 2 are floating targets. Depreciation, what you have for depreciation this year is not going to be what you have for depreciation next year. Depreciation is a floating target, but the floating target doesn't change what might be the real need. And so I have a little bit of concern with the numbers that we have in here, just like Jeff brought up. And my last comment, and this goes back to my history. We have a policy, we're going to be funding a policy, the board is going to be behind the policy. and I've talked to Tom about this briefly, I might suggest adding under the last page, item 6, that assets in any of these funds can only be used for the purpose of that particular fund, one of those 3 funds. And you can't shift them back and forth. You can't borrow against one fund to be able to deal with something that comes up after you've depleted one of the other 3 funds. And so it's a safety net, it's a security thing to assure future funds stay and are used only for future funds. And I say this because where I came from, we had some funds, and we had a double the time with people wanting to borrow from one fund to pay for a different fund. And it's there, it's all, the big purpose is the same, but they wanted to take money from this fund to pay for that fund within this, and, it's, common budget thing, to shift funds back and forth, but I think it's very important to protect these funds so that if you set it up for operating, it deals with operating, and it doesn't somehow become a backup to the water fund.
We keep them separated. There has been nothing as far as borrowing from one and then
I
trying to
know
hurry and pay it
you
back.
do, and I know you're not likely to, but this would be a protection that it wouldn't happen. It's looking down the road to a contingency that hopefully would never happen, but it puts a little wall around there, and it puts a protection around each one of the 3 funds.
Okay, this is all a really great discussion, but in the interest of time, it's clear we're not going to meet the objective, which is finalize the wordings of the current proposal. Unless I hear anything different, I suggest we table this topic for the time being. Does that make sense to everybody, or?
Table it to the next meeting, or table it for the time being, I guess that's.
I table it, well, I would suggest table it for the time being, but technically, in an issue like this, you would ask for a motion, a specific motion, seconded, approved. I mean, that's the technical way of doing it, but I'm thinking table it till we can open up some space on our calendar. Because right now, as far as I can figure out, our primary concern is the budget, and I'm struggling to get to the budget because we have a couple of staff people waiting to get on.
Can we commit to a time? So it doesn't, sometimes tables get really full of stuff and they
Well,
never get
I'm
addressed.
convinced that this is high on our priority list. I think we need to me, we need to get into the budget, but, if that's a requirement, then I would say we'll take this up again next week, maybe probably next Wednesday. We have every Monday and Wednesday allocated to this topic. Allocated for this committee to meet, every Monday and Wednesday this week. But, we can continue talking about this for the next hour, easy.
I'd suggest maybe
My-
tabling it until we hear about the line of credit release, until that alternative, because to me, that is a primary driver.
Well, I was going to suggest, Becky, if you could either edit the document with some of your suggested changes, then we can incorporate that. I didn't see anything too unreasonable with your suggestions. Or just send me an email and I can edit it. And,
Is it in a Word document?
yes.
Then I can edit.
And I think then, until we can then, go back to the line of credit situation, you could just sit there, and if everything goes according to what you think may happen, then it may be just a slam dunk to pass this on.
Okay.
You,
That's fine, but what I'm trying to do is try to
Yeah.
end this discussion
yeah.
in some
Nice.
dignified way. Yeah. So here's what I hear. Karina will just keep working on the line of credit thing and inform us progress. We've discussed this in public, and people will decide, as far as the board is concerned, what they should hear or not hear based on your own, you're on the board, you're the treasurer, you're the GM. Whether you want to discuss this with the board or not is up to your discretion. Carl will continue to work on the current draft. One issue that will take up, it will take up considerable time is when we take on the issue of part two, which is the working capital, which we have working capital account right now. I mean, the board approved, I don't know, $2.5 million or something to be put in there. So there's $2.5 million headed to an account for which we, I guess the existing policy says it goes into the reserve account. And
We're
that's,
setting up 2 new accounts
okay.
that it is being designated to.
Okay, so if it's in another account, then technically those accounts don't have any surrounding policy. That's the way I look at it. That might be the wrong way to look at it. Either that or they're separate accounts, but they're governed by the current policy. Something like that. But this committee envisions a separate policy for the working capital. Okay. And right now, that's, I think, where we are.
So is there a motion to table it until Karina comes back?
I motion that we get the edits into Carl, and then Carl can give us an updated draft, which we can share by email and continue to tweak. And then when Karina gets hers back from, on the line of credit, then we can bring the policy back to the table and finalize it.
Okay. Is that motion clear? Is there a second?
Second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Technically, I don't vote. Okay, anybody opposed? Nay?
Great.
No nays? Okay. All right, the second issue on the agenda is comments to the board regarding the proposal that we heard a couple of weeks ago, the fees for 2022. I wrote a memo or a draft to go to Karina. Does everybody have a copy of that? If not, I have a bunch of copies.
I'll take it.
This is,
Okay,
this
so-
is September 5, right?
I'm going to give 4 to this side of the table and 4 to that side of the table. There's also another thing way in the back, but we can talk about that later. I got one. Okay. If you look at the handouts, what I sent out was pages 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to be working off of a slightly different version because it has all my notes on it. If you'll go to page 2, you'll see my handwritten notes about a bunch of emails that followed after that, and I just wanted to hit those first because they're not on the page. The first topic was generally the topic of we need better measurements. I can't agree with that more. But at the same time, I didn't view that as specific to the 2022 fees. I think we, as a committee, really need to talk about measuring and tracking and monitoring. Jeff, those are basically most of your comments, but I'm like 1,000,000% in agreement with that. But I was hoping that this topic could fold more into a global evaluation of the process as a whole, because it affects just like almost everything we do, not just the fees. But anyway, what's your feeling?
Yeah, either way, either we tell them right now with the feedback on fees, or we tell them in general, but I mean, in general, we need to be tracking all the metrics of
Yeah.
how take rates and how many people do what or whatever. And those numbers and trends should be part of any budget, fee, discussion, whatever. Otherwise, you're just looking at numbers, and numbers don't, without some kind of metrics, don't really help us improve the overall process.
I agree. It's probably way too late for this year
Oh,
for that to
but they need to
happen.
start collecting now, is
Right,
my
right.
only point. Is if they aren't doing it now, then they need to start like
Yeah.
yesterday.
The amount of data we have in our database is mind-blowing. It's just we need somebody whose job it is to suck that on and make sure the
Yeah,
reports are
okay.
seen.
All right.
But yeah, okay. So I would not plan on putting anything like that in the memo.
Okay.
Another general suggestion was, when you look at things like employee discounts, super senior discounts, ACH, spousal discounts, they're sort of across the board, maybe not in 100% of the cases. There was some suggestion about, instead of having all these lines saying super senior, 50%, 50%, 50%, could we just say it once? Or, there was another same kind of comment about the employee discount, ACH. I don't mind putting that into a suggestion, but that's kind of a,
Let me show you guys what it looks like at this moment. I haven't sent it over because it's not finished, but.
Okay.
Would it help if I put it on hold? So for example, facilities had all this information that was crossed out. Once we get it complete, this has removed all those extra lines.
right.
As far as your ACH, all of those items were, let's see, Tennis has it on here. It has both pieces. So over here, what I've done is we've removed all of those duplicates and just put ACH billing optional, 15% additional, which does bring it all down. So once they have finished cleaning all this up, that's what you will see. So you can see, like, this is golf, for example. That's the whole sheet. Here's what golf did look like. So it has reduced it, but like I said, I just haven't sent all this over to you guys yet.
Okay.
Fees and stuff, with your quantities that you're referring to, they do track those. We have all that information in-house. Each department does go in and evaluate and track it, and all of that information is there. We just don't pass all of that along. So it is there.
This needs to be part of the discussion for justification.
And I understand that.
Okay.
And I'll show you, because I know Terry actually included his in here, because he worked on his separately. He already deleted his, so never mind. But he had all of his calculation worksheets in there. We just don't consolidate that into what we present.
Well, I mean, that's to a great degree a process issue in that if this committee wanted to see that, we would need it, 3 weeks in advance. And we just have not ever gotten yet to the process by which we do all this review stuff. Okay, so going back to trying to squish the big fee schedule down, this committee, and I'm not sure who made the observation or comments, want that in the memo or not want it in the memo? And we can always add, progress is already being made on this front. So, I mean, I'm just asking, include, exclude. Silence to me means, in this particular case, exclude. Because I'm not hearing, yeah, I really want that in the memo. Okay, I'm just gonna go and, next topic. There was some discussion about pickleball and pickleball fees. From what I understand, from the email discussion, there was no strong desire to press the issue of pickleball fees. So didn't include anything, not going to include anything unless somebody says, yeah, I think that's important. Okay.
Okay, so a quick question on that.
Sure.
If you look at the fee schedule, pickleball fees did go up.
Yeah. I think,
Yeah, they
right?
did,
They went
but it
up.
was
Yeah.
really minimal.
It was minimal. I don't disagree that it was very, very minimal, but they did go up.
The daily fee went up quite a bit, but that was an effort to equalize the,
The bundle.
the tennis and fitness center. They're all at $8. So fitness center actually did not change at all. Tennis went up by about 15%, 12%, and pickleball went up like a lot. But now they're equalized. But I think the annuals didn't go up, and I'm making this up totally.
Annuals went up like 50 cents for
Oh, yeah.
seniors and $1.
I would think that in pickleball, annuals are very heavily,
Dailies went up from $6.30 to $8. But
I mean, we don't have counts, so we don't know how many people at dailies, you know, how much the total income is
yeah,
annual.
we don't know the numbers, so we don't know.
Right.
that.
We don't know
hard to
the weighted average of the increase, essentially.
So, Kareem, was that something you were saying that that information is actually being tracked and available? It's just the committee hadn't been exposed to it, right? So if we wanted to know how many annual members at pickleball used it, we could get that number.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm curious on the fee thing. What was the overall philosophy on the increases? Because obviously we didn't go, everything goes up 5%. We went with some other way to
A lot
go
of it-
about it. And I'm just curious what the philosophy was in terms of how you decided this one's going to go up $1 and this one's going to go up 15%. And
A lot of it has come into play with how each department operates and what they need. And so for pickleball, for example, if you were to increase this price drastically with the history that we have going on with pickleball right now, it probably wouldn't be the best decision to make. Same with some of the other things. If you outprice yourself, you're not gonna have that quantity of sales, so you're gonna end up stabbing yourself in the foot. So they've evaluated that on every level. Some of the other stuff, it is minimal, just to clean it up, because we didn't really want to do an increase. We just was trying to clean up the numbers and so forth. So it really does come down to kind of each category and what applies there. Overall, yeah, we use the CPI increase index for a lot of them. Another factor that was taken into, how often has this rate changed? You know, many of these haven't changed for several years, so all those variables had come into play. It's different facets across the industry. It's not like we're producing, you know, toilet paper and that's all we do. And
No,
do you want
I get
2-ply or
that.
3-ply?
I was just curious because it seemed like you know,
Yeah, it was different.
in my half hour of kind of looking over the stuff, it seemed kind of random, but I figured there was a method behind it, so.
Well, there was also quite a bit of direction given from Larry on what fees should go up and how much in a lot of cases.
Okay,
Based
so,
on the work that y'all had done in order to get there, taking the assessment increase into account, where we didn't step on each other by going up on fees. So that was a lot of the decision was right there.
okay. So to try to close off the discussion on pickleball fees, there's nothing to be specifically requested of staff to consider. The next set of discussion was around the combination of the water disconnect fee and what appeared to be an idea or a concept of charging while disconnected as opposed to right now. I think the entire water bill shuts down when you disconnect your pipe. What I took out of the discussion was, it was an idea, but there was no specific proposal. That's correct?
So it's one of those things that we believe we could be able to do if the assessment increase does not pass. It is one area. They were still evaluating the pricing. John Paul, myself, and Jason, we've all had discussions about it.
Yeah.
What we would like to be able to do is to keep the ambulance fee and the streetlight fee active. Now, the other side of it, I think the first calculation had half of the base fee for utilities in it. I think that still needs to be considered, you know, whether it's a minimal fee instead of at that price or whatnot. So it's off the table at the moment. It's available as an option later. But as far as the utility, or I'm sorry, the light fee and the ambulance fee, we have to figure out a way we could do it within our system. So once we figure that part out, then we would bring it to the table as something we could.
The reason that it has not been done before, and I stumbled onto this, was that there's no easy way to do it. We have to get the help from the programmers that do this to put a fee on there, unless we do some kind of backdoor tweak to it ourselves. And the fee for doing that would cost more than what we collect in a year on this fee. But we do need to collect the ambulance fee, and we do need to collect the streetlight fee when these people are gone, because they continue anyway. And to have some kind of a minimum, we threw out $50 as a minimum for everything, and do that. We think we'll be able to a way to do the fee, so we think we can do it without having to go reprogram everything and cost us a lot of money.
So the issue is there anything that this committee wishes to put into the memo?
I don't think so, since they've tabled it.
Okay.
Does the committee feel like that's a good idea to charge a fee for?
Until we discuss it.
Okay.
I have no opinion right now. And I mean, at this point, realistically, we're kind of out of time, really. I mean, you guys got to complete your work, putting the budget together based on some fee schedule.
Yeah.
And I just
Well, we can
personally
always
don't
tweak.
feel that we should be too active in saying, do this, do that.
I was actually shocked after 21 years to find out that there wasn't a minimum fee.
Okay. From what I could tell, talking about the increase in fees for garbage collection, that's been essentially off the table. So right now, we're looking at essentially either a zero or a minimal increase.
Yeah, no
So-
change and no change on both of those.
Okay, so those were issues, okay, so that's the first line there, no change, okay. So if you just look at, these are things in the memo that I have drafted and proposing, and we can either keep it in, strike, revise, whatever. Okay, the first one is, we sell membership fees. It's $500, been always $500. Not always, probably the last 4 to 5 years. Just considering everything, I personally felt strongly that the $500 should be increased. And as far as I'm concerned, you can CPI index that baby back to the day it was instituted 500, but at a minimum, it's saying increase the fee. I don't feel good about no change at all. So that's my feeling. How does the committee feel about that? Keep it, strike it, change it.
How many membership fees are sold by the POA? Not a huge number.
It's not a huge number, I couldn't tell you exactly.
A dozen.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's somewhat inconsequential, and doesn't it require remaining competitive with what other private lot owners are selling theirs for a little bit, or is there a requirement that, I mean, they can sell it for whatever they want, can they not?
That's all up to them, yes.
Yeah, so to remain competitive, I don't think you mess with it too much.
And it's not advertised or publicized, they come to us, and that's why there's so few. We'd rather sell a lot than a membership fee.
Yeah, those that participate are those that I have for years.
Yeah. And I know you can buy it cheaper from other lot owners.
Well, the way I look at it is, if I were a lot owner and I'm seeing my fee go up 5.8%, and I don't see that going up 5.8%, I would feel slighted.
There's no problem going up with that fee.
Now, I forwarded your email to all of the staff. I just haven't gotten feedback on all of it yet.
Okay. Well, I think from my standpoint, we still need an official, this committee recommends this, that, or the other thing. So I'm gonna just leave it in, as is. Okay. Golf, I'm just interested in this, and in looking at all the other emails, I think in terms of measurement and all other needs stuff, people are interested. When we sell a golf pass, generally, what's the average usage of that? You got a guess?
So we did that analysis in the
Oh, okay.
frat,
Mhm.
and, you know, that for those that buy annual passes,
Mhm.
okay, the utilization is very good,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And their cost per round is extremely low.
Because the one time I had ever heard a
$16,
number,
right?
it was,
Yeah, but there was a wide variance of those that golf 250, you know.
Right.
Extremes, and then people who
And then
golf
there's some-
70, which like,
yeah,
that didn't pay.
Right.
But as a rule, yes, it's an excellent deal.
As
And I
the
think that-
average,
mm-hmm.
you know, average, right? So there's a bunch of people below, a bunch of people above. But the average is a pretty good deal.
Because I had heard something like 150, and I certainly,
I think the average was more like 125 or 30.
It always has been.
125, 130, I
Okay.
think is the average. I can
Okay.
look it up at the emails, but,
but of course, as you said, the distribution might be
yeah.
pretty weird. Okay, I was just always curious.
Well, it's the type of thing that in this village, it depends a little. I mean, ours can vary, just ours personally, from 110 or 150 to 100 to 150, based on how many researchers we have in a given year.
Yeah, yeah.
And when, and the
But if you
timing.
look at just a bunch of numbers year to
Yeah.
year, the curve is probably relatively stable. The biggest variable is probably rain. That's,
Yeah.
okay. Recreation, the bundle plus golf, we are increasing the bundle fee from something like $550 to $650. The proposal was to add another $100 for unlimited golf at Coronado on Tuesdays and Thursdays. My first look at that was, boy, for $100, if I'm already convinced I'm gonna buy the bundle at $650, then the incremental $100 just for the golf, you should be able to cover in 8 to 10 rounds, which, personally speaking, I can do by March 15th, I would say. So it's like too good to be true, but the only market isn't necessarily just people who are already buying the bundle, and we don't know who's gonna buy the bundle next year because we're raising the price to $100. I'm just saying from the point of view of current bundle owners who may be golfers, the $100 on the surface is too good to be true, but that doesn't mean there isn't a much wider market for this particular adaptation. My only point of view is, you know, A, think about it, B, who are you planning to sell this new bundle to? And, you know, is it gonna make a difference? I really, at the end of the day, don't have any strong point of view on that, just think about it. The other question is there some magic about Tuesdays and Thursdays?
It's
But
their slowest days. And
They are the
days that
slowest
They
days.
don't have leagues or that sort of thing.
Okay, all right, so that's a really good reason for that. Like a lot of other things, I'm perfectly happy if this committee says, that isn't that big of a deal, strike it. If you think it's worth keeping in there, you can keep it in there.
I think it's not a bad idea to try and, you know, increase rounds on the slower days and to increase utilization of Coronado, because of just the inequity on carts and everything else that goes along with that. So I'd say give it a try. Back to my metrics thing, let's measure it, so that when we come back around next year, we have data by which we are analyzing this, and we can, you know, then say, hey, that made sense or didn't make sense or whatever. But just looking at it on the surface, that's all I can say at this point.
So any further thoughts? So what I'm hearing is it's probably okay to leave it in. I might change the wording a little bit, add some wording to reflect what Jeff just said. It's not a hard recommendation or anything like that. Well, my other comment was, just make sure people know that the card does not cover carts, and I assume it doesn't cover the surcharge.
You're correct.
Okay. And to me, it just, you just want to avoid surprises, that's all. Okay. This is a small correction to what the copy that I was looking at, it often compares 2021 fees to 2022 fees. It had 2021 bundle fees listed with the golf, and it just shouldn't have been there. In another one of my perhaps over-analytical diatribe, I guess, when I looked at the 5 to 10 day multi-visitor pass, my first reaction was typically the closest things that were comparable in the past have been golf, the big, what I call high volume tickets. And when you look at high volume tickets, to me, the value proposition was pretty clear. It was a win-win situation. We get stuff out of it, and the buyer gets stuff out of it. When I look at the 5 to 10 day pass, clearly they benefit, but I just didn't see the benefits to us. So that was my comment. Think about it if you decide to, my point of view is think about it. If you want to proceed, proceed. And that was pretty much it. So.
Just a little bit for another point of view, I think it's kind of, according to Jeff's thing, track the metrics of it, but I kind of like the idea of a 5 to 10 visit for people who are visiting. Anything that increases volume is certainly worth a try. We've got underutilized assets, and give it a shot, but measure it.
I understand visitors being the target market, in which case it wouldn't be $7, it'd be a much higher number. The other thing is, in many situations, we issue 7 day passes,
Yeah, but,
which is slightly different.
if I ever tried pickleball, I might be slightly more
Right.
convinced to say, give it a shot. I
Yeah,
think it's something.
Yeah, the
it's good.
whole issue with visitors versus residents.
Okay,
I mean, I agree with you. For visitors, you just do something different.
okay, I got it.
Okay, again, for the committee, leave in, take out. Yes?
Just a question, it came up at the last board meeting. Has there been any thought about, I think it was Pam's recommendation or suggestion, that we look at the fees for the different facilities in regards to nonprofits?
I'll let you talk to that one. I know you and Stephanie with
I don't care where we went, I just wondered if it was going to go anywhere.
facility rental fees for nonprofits.
Yeah, Stephanie and Terry.
I don't know if the rest of the people are aware that they came up at the last board meeting.
Yeah, well, it was, Pam was talking about utilizing the Coronado Center more. And the problem with that is you're cannibalizing other places. If you go down on fees there, you cannibalize this over here. And we were kind of looking at that as if the assessment increased pass or if it didn't pass. And if the assessment increased pass, that's going to be a lot easier to do when you're not holding each accountable, every facility feet to the fire with their budget and their revenue. So that's kind of up in the air as far as whether we do that or not, depending on the assessment increase. But that was what it was tied to. If you lower the fees or make them zero, Coronado Center, your expenses go through the roof because you have to staff it now with people. And we don't have any over there now. We're able to kind of hold down the expenses over there. So it's a philosophical discussion, and really it's something for the board, and I talked about this forever because I've been here so long, is how the wind drifts between assessments and fees. And, you got, when you have good assessments, the fees are lower, and that's the attraction. But then whenever you don't have the assessment, fees go up to keep everything going. And it's whichever way the wind's blowing at the time. And so the wind is right in the middle right now.
I'm not proposing or agreeing with it, I just wondered if,
Yeah, no, it's being looked at, absolutely.
Tom, to your specific point about the 5 or 10 bundle, I don't know that we need to comment on it from this committee. I mean, let it go, let them take a hack at it, and we'll collect the metrics and then see how it pans out.
Okay.
And that's kind of what they did with the first bundle.
Yeah.
They didn't know how it would produce and so forth. And they did go in with a lower rate, hoping it would draw some attention and so forth. And then to see what the buy-in is and adjust it from there. And as you said, I'm sure that's a big part of with this one is you gotta test the water. But yes, back to your point, metrics and all that will be tracked.
Okay. Just to cut this short, I'm just gonna strike this entirely. Okay, outdoor pool, technical correction, the super senior was listed at 75, it was just an error, I assume it should be 50.
I'll double check
Yeah.
that.
I was just wondering, when originally presented, the pool was supposed to target break even, is that still their general goal?
It does break even, yeah.
Okay, all right. RV park, really strong financials. I was just wondering if we could take rate there. So anyway, any thoughts from the committee, leave it in?
Build more?
Yeah,
Well, and we didn't increase the price either. They kept that pricing the
I
same.
don't know if you've been following that, but it's like, out of all the discovery packages, 30% are staying at the RV park, somewhere in that facility. It's amazing.
yeah. Can we charge more? That's a problem question. So, I mean, end of the day, you do what you feel is best. But from this committee, it's like, if I see an opportunity, take rate, think about it, that's it. I mean, I'm not suggesting what to do other than think about it. Is this an opportunity?
And I'll
Okay.
have to go back to that team to get the reasoning
Yeah,
of
sure.
why they kept it, and
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
forward that along.
Yeah, if they feel it's the best thing to do, then.
Yeah, just a quick question about the RV park. How often is it full?
I don't really know.
I was just kinda
We can
curious,
find
you
out
got-
for you,
you
but I
said
think a
full.
lot of the time.
It is pretty full most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, my only comment is when you look at the income and expenses, the income is way bigger than the expenses. I'm assuming they're reasonable. The allocations are reasonable.
Do you know the difference between property owner usage and non-properties, non-property owners on the RV park?
As far as I know, the only ones that we have staying there that are not property owners are through our packages.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to public services. It sounds to me like the $1 a month stormwater culvert thing was eliminated. Okay, so no discussion there. I'll strike that. There was some notes in the fee schedule about possibly including labor for certain services. It seemed to me that there was pretty strong support of that concept from this committee. There were no proposals to actually do so. So I don't know how serious the comment was for 2022, or we're just being prepped for 2023.
Is that not where they've got material cost plus labor in the comments? Yeah, so it would be specific to each job, but my understanding is they would be calculating the man hours and adding that to
Okay.
what's being charged.
All right. So I think we're supportive of that. The only issue I have is, and this is me being greedy, if you could come up with a reasonable overhead and equipment charge, not just labor, that's good for me, but I don't know. If the committee wants to at least put in that, think about it, it's really just to think about it, and it may be too late to implement something for next year, but if it's just a process issue, think about it. You would probably have to be involved in the pricing if we're gonna include labor and overhead and equipment, but that's my only comment. Is the committee comfortable with that? Okay.
Tom, you passed over the streetlight fee?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I have a question, Mike. Yeah, what's the update on the streetlight fee?
What,
You're still, there was definitely resistance on the streetlight fee.
well, there's already a street light fee, what,
Yeah.
No,
I
the
got
increase in the streetlight fee.
I don't remember. I got too
It
much
was
stuff
probably in
floating
the
in my head.
neighborhood of 5%, but,
So this gets to be a broader question, which is, for the streetlight fee, if we're gonna increase it,
They did do it.
what's the money going to?
So the street light fee is what goes into Public Works, I believe, and that's where the money is in there. It's in our regular operating account, but the income is allocated into Public Works, which funds your streets, your sanitation, all that stuff. The
There's no
electric bill
separate
that we
funding
pay,
like
I mean, it all ends up,
yeah. It just goes into the big old operating
Yes.
cash. As opposed to public utilities, which there is a process, kind of a true-up process
but see,
that sort of tries to separate
but then when
public
we're,
utilities, water and sewer specifically.
Yeah. I understand.
when then we're billed by Energy and First Electric for the street lights, that's all going to A130 and stuff, so, I mean, it is in your main operating piece, yes.
And it's not reported separately as its own line of business, that I know. If you look at the big hairy breakdown, the monthly breakdown of department level expenses, it's not separate.
It's not separated, no.
I just look at it as and we as a frat looked at this also. To me, this is a issue for the POA. Because we collect a street light fee, it says street light. So most of us would immediately think that's what's being used to keep all the street lights fixed. But we don't use the money that way. We use it for whatever we happen to want to use it for. We don't track it.
I mean, it is
that
going
way.
into that division that is,
I
that
got
is
the division
maintaining
piece,
it.
but it doesn't, it says street light, and we use it for public works. That doesn't track very well from a fee structure standpoint. And just, I am a little concerned that we have a fee out there that we don't have a defined purpose for, and it could be challenged.
Well,
And we don't have a separate meter for the streetlights, right?
well, there's a fee for the streetlights. I mean, how much is the fee for all the streetlights?
I'd have to go back and pull the
The
bills.
streetlights versus what we collect. I mean, that's really what you're asking.
All I'm saying
Well,
is it's
and
not
them
tracked that
installing them,
way.
because Wesley installs them, and it's the cost of buying the pole and everything else that goes in, so it helps cover that cost of all of those additions.
But might it be something as simple to resolve as a change in terminology and simply say street light and something surcharge?
I
I
do,
understand your
my
point.
only
If you're-
point is I think, there needs to be some background work done to look and see what all of these things that you've mentioned, how they actually add up to what we actually collect in, and do some forensics there so we know what exactly that fee actually pays for, what it doesn't pay for. So we have clarity
I'll get back to you
on
on
that
that.
fee.
Let me do a little more digging in and
Yeah.
I'll get you guys some answers.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm hearing, and a little bit of a quandary here. I'd like to strike that comment and just wait for Karina to get back.
That's fine with me.
Okay, very good. Okay. New house and water sewer hookup. The proposal is to increase the fee from $2,400 to $2,500. I don't have any problem with that. The issue that I had was, when I looked at the 2021 capital budget, it looked like we were budgeting $2,700 per house just for materials. So the 2,400 looked short of the 2,700. So the question is, what happens in 2022? We charge 2,500, I don't know what we're gonna budget, but are we trying to cover materials costs? At the end of the day, my serious proposal is public utilities should, do whatever the heck they want in terms of fees, but it would be nice to understand, what the implications of the fee setting for this particular item was. Because I kind of thought that the purpose of the 2,500 was to cover materials costs.
I'm gonna let Jason answer this one, so I'll get back to you on it.
Okay. I'm gonna leave that in there.
And in the frat, we had several conversations about this very topic, so I know Jason will have the numbers.
Okay. Tourism. We discussed last meeting, we do issue visitors passes. There are really two issues, one being a fee issue, which is, should we think about charging for that? And the second really is, charge it or not, is it an opportunity to collect management information? So, and like Jeff
So
said,
I
we should
can-
at least count them.
Well, I can tell you from our frat analysis, okay? One, we should collect it so we could have the metrics, but two, administering a visitor fee from an administrative standpoint, we could not figure out how you could make that work, because you can't ask the gate guard to collect money. So now who are you gonna hire to go sit at the gates and collect money?
Well, there are two issues.
Okay? And or are you gonna charge the person that has to call in to sign them in, which doesn't always work. There's a lot of issues here, and when we ran it, we looked at them, we went all the different directions, and I'll be honest with you, charging a fee for a visitor became unsolvable.
I thought,
Everybody thought it was a great, excuse me,
Yeah.
but everybody thought, oh, that's a great idea. It got popular support from emails and everything else,
Yeah, yeah.
but then you looked at the administration of it, and it was just,
who,
do you allow churches? Do you charge them a fee for as many people as you can? Do they call in everybody, and does the church pay and collect it from the parishioner?
Okay.
What about supporting the businesses? Do we?
What about family
Let-
members that are
let
going
me,
to
let me
visit?
explain to you what I thought a visitor pass was.
Okay.
Because I've done this. I have rented a unit through Village Villas. They give you a packet, in there's a little purple card that says, show this, and I can now use the golf course. So I thought that little purple card came from, for lack of a better term, Karina. No? So we're saying,
There was a little orange card.
well,
That
whatever.
comes from the marketing department.
Well, the thing is, if we issue those cards to Village Villas, not for anybody who comes through the gate, but I'm speaking specifically of people renting units.
So that gets to closer to rental properties, which is a different topic than a visitor fee, so.
Right, but John said we already issue visitors cards. When he said "we," I thought he meant essentially Karina or marketing, and they do so on a fairly formal basis as a result of the rental people saying, I need a rental card because that's so my renters can go use the golf course. That's,
Well, I think you're looking at two different things,
Right.
though. what he was referring to is the renters in the system, that's our long-term renters.
Those two. They-
Because then they're actually into the system as a tenant, under a property owner. You know, water bill goes to them, they get their card just like everybody else. So that's different than just somebody coming in and staying for a week at, Los Lagos or somewhere.
But there's also a difference between Village Villas or Century
Right.
21 and Airbnb.
Correct.
And there's a huge difference there, and how do you, who slips through the cracks on that one?
Right.
So,
Right, okay. So based on this conversation, I would strike this
I think you need to strike it, because it needs to be
Right.
addressed by a different
Much-
effort.
much
a
different-
Bigger
process.
deep dive.
Okay. That's it for this.
I have a curiosity question, because I'm not clear on this. Visitor pass versus I let my friend in, is a guest pass, or is that considered a guest pass? Visitor pass. I meant visitor pass. So the proposal, like the Frat F was thinking, I call and let my friend in for the day, somebody would have to pay some fee.
So originally, we thought if you called in to get your friend in, then we would charge you,
Yeah.
okay? That sounded simple, right?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, until you started trying to do the mechanics of, okay, so how am I gonna charge you? And, then, what if it's a family member?
Yeah.
We're gonna charge you? What if, but how about a church parishioner? When you start running down all the rabbit holes of who comes to visit Hot Springs Village and what, and how they get in the gate and all that kind of stuff, it gets to be very complex. And we started looking at administratively, how does the POA administer that fairly? And we realized that we were gonna spend more time trying to figure out how to do it, almost like you said, we're gonna end up spending more money trying to figure out how to do it than we are gonna collect in fees.
And incur a great deal of bad will.
And bad publicity, bad everything else with it, so.
I'm not sure this is the appropriate time, but was any consideration given to a separate fee for unimproved, a slight increase for unimproved property owners for, say, golf?
I know it has been brought up. I don't think any decision was ever made to execute it. Like I said, though, I did forward this email along, and we'll see if Tom has any input to add to that.
Is it executable without too much commisery? The reason I kind of push it a little more than I normally would is I think it has a big influence on the effect of the vote for assessments. It is, given the disparity in the increase of the assessments, I do think it pacifies a few property owners saying, well, there's some equity there. So I think it's kind of important myself.
I agree with Kathy, that I think that ought to be added to the note back to have them look a little harder at that particular option.
That and Karina's job's too easy, she needs something
Oh.
like that to do, sorry.
Yeah, the focus of this memo was 2022 fees.
We're talking 2022 fees.
Okay.
And
very
I think
good.
it's very important to
All
get
right.
it into 2022.
Do you know what other
I will add
discussions
that.
we've had on that? Because I never
Say
heard,
again.
do you know any ending discussion on that? I never heard anything definitively.
well, no, I did not think that was an art to look in. I thought that was a FRAD committee and F&P committee decision based on what the lawyer said about the ability to do that, number one.
Lawyer said good.
That it was okay, but I did not know that was in our court to think about. I thought it was going to be given to us as a recommendation, one way or the other.
I guess we can go ask Gary if that recommendation was agreed upon by the board. Not to put Gary on the spot, but I mean, I guess that's where you, that's.
Charge more for a not improved lot. I don't think it's ever been.
First of all, you have to understand, we have, a juggler has 3 or 4 balls up in the air all the time. We have a lot, you and the board have a lot of things up here until we get a vote from the property owners. But didn't we see some metrics on the number of unimproved lot owners who are using the facilities, and it's a pretty good-sized number.
Correct.
So, I don't have a vote count in front of me, but best I can remember, you've got positive feedback from the board to do that. Now, I don't remember us taking a vote on that specific item.
Well, you didn't take a vote on it, but I never even was aware of a consensus on it, so maybe I slept during that one, but I wasn't aware of it.
If it was on this list of fees today,
It was
I
not
would-
included on this list of
I'm-
fees because
I
we
say
didn't know whether
if-
to.
If it was, I would not see pushback at all. I'll
Well,
put it
the only
that way.
pushback that I would say, in my experience with these votes, is that if you give the non-resident property owners a chance to vote no, they will. And if you're gonna charge them a higher price to play golf or a higher price, I think you may be shooting yourself in the foot there with that one, but.
Well, we heard a lot of discussions. Part of that discussion was private, well, country club. You know, all I gotta do is buy the cheapest lot in the village, and I can come play golf, because I live in Benton or something.
Right.
So, that conversation did surface this summer. Now,
But to
So
play-
Could
John
I make-
Paul, I can just give you, from the Frats analysis on this, okay, the Frats analysis on this, when we looked at, and we weren't talking like big increases, $1 here, $1 there, it's $1 more to play golf, $1 more to play tennis or whatever the case may be. Our analysis and talking to people, and those that are doing that, they weren't gonna bat an eye. That was not gonna be a deal changer for them. That was our analysis. Okay? And it was because we were only talking $1 here, $2 here, whatever, kind of a thing. But I'm sure we can all debate that. But that's what we came to understand, based on those people that are using Hot Springs Village are not gonna stop using Hot Springs Village because golf went up $1.
No, I agree with that.
So.
And just weighing it against,
Would it cause them to vote
The assessment.
Would
no?
it cause them to vote no? We don't think they'll vote no regardless, one way or another.
And I'm gonna play the devil's advocate here. I'm paying you guys close to $500 a year to come in here. Then I'm paying you a fee for using the golf course. If
Well,
you're gonna
everybody
keep nickel
does.
and diming me, you can take this lot and you can put it where the sun doesn't shine.
Well,
Playing the devil's advocate.
Well, that's what we've had to do with the whole fee schedule is, okay, if we have an assessment increase that's on the table, we've really got to be careful. We don't want to raise everything by 5.8% because they're going to say you're jobbing us out of fees, so, go kick rocks. Part of it is trying to find that balancing act and where is that sweet spot. We don't know what's going to happen, but it's like the other fees that we've taken off the table, but we weren't saying, hey, let's enact these now. We were saying, hey, here's some things that we can do possibly. Why couldn't this be one of those? And we can always come back and revise the fees after the assessment is voted. And if that's the case, we may put in some of the other things, plus that, or nothing, it's all variable.
I think what Kathy was saying is that we need to make sure we do the legwork on that. Okay, to figure out how we administer it and how we would do it. Then you can decide with the discussions with the board whether you want to play that card or not play that card
Exactly.
going forward.
But Kathy, it's a good point, but you really have to consider, they are giving us year after year close to $500 so that they can come in and play golf.
Well, and
Plus
Well,
if
but
they-
but
if they-
that's way cheap compared to somebody who owns a house here, and I still pay for golf. Okay, so it's, to me, they have an incredible deal at $500.
I'm just saying, we need to look, especially with assessment coming up, you really do need to look at it from a different perspective, because you have to sell them on why they would vote for the assessment. You have to sell them on why they wouldn't turn it back over to the state. And it's a tough act to follow, and it's a tough one, it's a tightrope to always be on. And then you have the other side that Kathy mentions is, you're not being fair to me. And that's a common, it's always out there, and I don't care which side you're on, you're not being fair to me, is what you're gonna get from a number of people.
Well, and we're gonna get that, I'll just maintain, because this is something I feel fairly strongly about, so my apologies. But this is conjecture, but of the unimproved property owners, I would divide them into 3 sets. Those that live within a 2-hour radius of Hot Springs Village, there's maybe 4,500 of them, I would guess, or maybe a little more, and use the facilities regularly. There's another 30% that are probably villagers who live here and own a lot or 2 or 3 next to them because they don't want anybody to build there. And or because they like to support the village. And then there's another 30%, these are broad barrels, but who have never visited, who not even sure they know they own a lot here.
Or they
just-
inherited it from their parents, and they're really
Exactly.
still mad at their parents for dumping it on them.
Yes, and I look at some of that, or our neighbors who just say, oh, we bill it, we pay it, and that's okay. And we put pink flamingos in their yard every time somebody comes to look at it. Not seriously. But given those 3 barrels, if the golf fees are raised $1, I would say not more than 5 people in one of those barrels is gonna give a darn from unimproved property owners. Those who don't know they own a lot certainly aren't. Those that live within a 2-hour or 5-hour radius won't know about it till after the vote, number one, because I guarantee you, if 2 of them look at what the fee schedule is gonna be for next year, I'd be surprised. In January, somebody's gonna say, hey, that's more than last year, but it's not gonna have an effect. And those that own a lot, it makes no difference to them whatsoever. I consider it an absolute no-brainer and somewhat imperative to help villagers who have improved lots say, okay, we're having a $20 increase, they're having a $2 increase, but they pay $1 more for golf. That's reasonable, to me.
Well, like Jeff's been talking about, the metrics on that, we have to find out how much money it's gonna bring in. $1 is gonna bring in on that, and it may be a moot point, it may not be that much, it may be a lot. We've gotta find out what that is.
Well, if there's 4,500 paying at least once a week, it gets up there a little bit.
I mean, I have no problem, going either way.
Yeah.
We just
It's-
didn't have the direction
No, we didn't.
of doing it.
It's not a
so-
difficult thing to do.
Okay. We're there.
Okay, so that's in. At this point, are there any other items about this upcoming memo to staff about the 2022 fee schedule? With that, I would then finally get to the 2022 budget.
I already dismissed them. They
Okay,
had another committee meeting to go to.
okay.
We can
Can I ask you a favor?
we can go over it.
Yeah.
But I don't have.
Exactly. And I'm sorry that we took so long on here, but anybody who thought, well, that would be a bad thing to say. This is tough stuff, and it's really important. The fee schedule is very important.
Oh, I agree. I was
Reserve
just,
things are very important, and they're very complex. They're really hard topics. And, you know,
no problem. I was just saying they had another meeting, so that's why they
Yeah,
already left.
I understand, but just keep in mind, we have
20 minutes.
meeting scheduled for next Monday, Wednesday, so we'll give it another shot. Okay.
All right, so let's jump in. PU 10 is Public Utilities Admin, okay? You can see 2019, or 18, 19, and 20's actual, 2021's budget, year-to-date as of July. This is a simple calculation of taking that amount and calculating it out to the end of the year for a forecast. Here's budget. I'm not done, so there's no payroll in here except for what they have added. They typically do not have part-time people And with everything that has gone on, they are proposing to maybe add some part-time help to get some of the phones and the admin stuff caught up and done. But, like I said, I've not done payroll, that'll come in later. So, we'll jump down into your expenses. Here, I said, is your 2021 budget. Here's your 2022 budget. So that's right in line. Let me make sure my math here is correct. It's not. Man, I did that backwards. I think. Let's look. No, okay. So copier supplies, printer forms, that's gone down. Your computer software and hardware, that allocation is still to be done, but that's a good estimate of what your total will be. Uniforms is going up to $55. So it's all, here's your change for budget. Let me see if I can make this a hair bigger for, oops. So, the safety equipment, that has gone down. PU10 only has 2 employees in it, currently, 3 employees, so the safety expense is not there. Medical fees is drug testing, fuel and oil, that is the same pretty much. Let's see where your next differences are. Your maintenance of buildings, that one is still to be allocated. Mike put that one in. That's the new allocations that we started for 2021, where expenses are spread to the applicable departments. That's why you guys will see a lot of the accounts like that that have 0 in the history, and then they've actually start to have some figures.
Do you have like a cheat sheet of which items are that way?
Yeah,
Okay,
Well-
could you just send it to us at some point so we can kind of know that?
yeah.
Okay.
And it's gonna be your IT, your building maintenance, and your fleet, your,
Fleet.
let's see, all that's gone down. This one's pretty cut and dry. Your biggest change here is the recruiting and training, and it's decreased, it's not an increase. So overall, your 2021 budget was $24,000 for operating expenses only. And it has dropped by $1,500 for 2022. You can see what's made up in here. We've got some of the comments on the side, so if you guys have questions of what make them up.
Okay.
There's no capital in this account. So, do you guys have any questions on this particular department so far? I know we're just breezing through it at the moment, but it's,
Column L is budget change 2022 to over 2021.
correct.
Column M is,
That's variance from forecast, and I haven't moved
Okay,
that
all
yet. There you go.
so is the year-end forecast, column J, are those what you're projecting today?
This is
Where they end up at?
it's a simple calculation, taking the year-to-date actual as of July, dividing that by
Annualizing.
7 times 12. So it will definitely apply in most areas. There will be some areas that will still need tweaking.
I don't know what the rest of the committee thinks, but to me, the key number is the variance from forecast rather than the prior year budget. So you're looking at a $15,000 or a $7,000 increase. I mean, that may be immaterial here, I don't know, but it's just an observation.
Well, 4,000 of it is right here from the contracts
Okay.
that they hadn't spent anything as of yet. And here's where that they've got it. So yes, you're gonna see a bigger change from your forecast and the budget in a lot of areas because our expenses are down. So,
Is our expenses down because we haven't executed?
some of it, yeah.
In
I
some
mean,
cases. But in other cases, they're just down. Payroll's way down. Expenses that we haven't spent, it's across the board.
Yeah, but payroll's way down because we lost employees.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so, I mean, we hope to hire those back, so that doesn't help us in forecasting forward, because in reality, we want to hire all those people back and some more.
That's true.
So,
That-
I don't understand the logic.
But every year, we're always gonna have a deficit in that category. In the past, we've all, back when Dave Johnson was here, they always put a factor in there for how many people you're gonna be down.
You're lose,
They
yeah.
factor
Well,
that
that's
in.
probably not a bad,
well, and that's why I was saying budget to budget, because your variance from forecast this year is skewed, it's lower than what it's gonna be, so you're gonna have a bigger difference. Does that make sense? All right, so the water department. Here is the revenue that has come over, so that, he was supposed to have updated this last night, so I'll confirm with him, but it's got the 5.8 increase. Incorporated, like I said, I have not filled in any of the payroll stuff. This is kind of what they have keyed in, so we'll go back over that at a later point. Like I said, not all these formulas have been done, but, let's see. If you're wanting it here. Let's see, so everything is fairly in line with where it's been. The safety equipment has gone down. Let me see if I can get the comments in. Let's see. Are you guys wanting to see what's primarily going up, or what, since I'm trying to kind of hurry up and go through this, and it's not, I don't have all the answers to every question you'd want probably, but is there things I can point out to you guys?
Well,
You sent
I have
us
very
this
general
one.
questions.
Okay,
Number one is, you sent us something, did you send us this, or did you send us a PDF?
I sent you this in PDF.
Okay. The second issue is, clearly this is work in process, there's stuff that you haven't updated yet, there's stuff that is more or less kind of what you think.
These numbers are all correct.
Mm-hmm.
All this is all correct. This is all correct, except I have not finished this piece.
Right, so it's gonna be kind of hard for us to look at what you sent us, and for us to know pretty much right away what's in there, what's not in there. So, I mean, it's just, I mean, I'll look at it as best I can, but I'm not sure how far I can get.
Yeah, it's confusing to me because when you go up to revenues, it's showing a $518,000 increase, even though we're increasing 5.8%.
You're talking about right here?
Yeah, yes.
So that would be based upon what their total sales are and number of residents and all that, and computing that out with that 5.8 increase with the rate.
Because it's a negative number, because it's income.
Yeah, I know, but when you're looking at the budget versus the year-end forecast, it's 2.7.
2.7
I'm sorry.
versus 2.5.
I did read that wrong,
Yeah.
sorry. Red threw me off.
Yeah.
Well, if we're,
Never mind, I'm sorry. My bad.
you're fine.
So Karina, I think the big things are, is what are the changes? What are the what are the
Yeah.
big dollar changes? And what are the comments on the right that are either new and or significant? That's what we really need to know. If it's $100 here, $100 there, that's budget dust. We really shouldn't be spending any time on those. It's
I
where the
agree.
big changes are, or a comment that,
The justification.
that's significant, that we should go, do we understand that? Do we know why? Blah, blah, blah.
What are you saying, Jeff? Like maybe a 5% variation or a 10% variation? If it's less than that percentage variation, who cares?
But if we're talking minimal dollars, it really doesn't matter. I mean, if it's $100 compared to why do we have a $35,000 difference? I know what you're saying there.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking how minute, are you guys wanting me to go down every single line, even if it's zero change? Okay.
I mean, I think I'm in the same boat as everybody else. The first thing you look for is what's big, particular dollars. And I'm not sure what drives water department expenses, or, I know what drives their income. I'm not sure I know what, so, I mean, part of the exercise for me is to look through this and see if it's obvious what the key drivers are, or there are 8 million key drivers, each of which is, $100, and you add them all up and you come up with.
Your main one, like this one, is gonna be your fertilizers and chemicals to treat the water.
Okay,
That's where it went
Right.
from 90,000. We're looking at, if it all trended out, 97. Like I said, that's that simple calculation. As of July, we're at 57. So, and we've got 96 budgeted. Their comment is making more water using more chemicals, so it's gonna go
Right.
as far as the demand of the water.
the other big key driver is payroll. You haven't done that yet.
Nope,
The other big key driver, which isn't on here, is probably capital
it's
expenditure.
at the bottom.
Yeah, and one of the big questions for you is, as far as we're concerned, I think this committee is probably very interested in capital expenditures, but roughly in the timeline, I wanted to go over the budget, and when we're done with this, I probably do want to go over the budget calendar. Where in this whole thing do we get to see capital expenditures? Because that last year, that was very late in the process.
It's right here.
Oh, it's in there? Okay, great.
So.
Probably look at that.
So here's revenue on every tab that's applicable. Revenue, your salaries, and if there's cost of goods, your operating expenses, and capital is down at the bottom.
Okay,
So,
that's really helpful. And then there's just an issue of what's completed and what's not
yeah,
completed.
so payroll and those allocation accounts is the only piece that has not been completed.
The other big issue is from a big kind of corporate strategic level, are there any specific initiatives or specific goals that the water department is really driving for? Because I think we had discussed, and the FRAD had discussed, stuff like, what's essentially capital expenditures, which is, pipe replacement, expanding, processing, water, whatever it's called, a holding tank or stuff like that. And, just verbally, without respect to all the numbers, are there big chunky initiatives?
Yeah, you got your sodium chloride converter in there.
Right.
It's right there.
Okay.
The answer to your question is yes.
Yeah, I mean, I know they have them, but, are they kind of quote disclosed to us in
narrative.
here or someplace else?
A narrative of the goals.
Yes, that's very well stated.
Yeah. No, yes, there will be. Let me
Yeah,
do the macro here for a minute, because I think it's important, especially you bring out the timetable as far as the budget goes. We're about 24 hours ahead of you on this.
yeah,
Okay? We're meeting every day with a different department, going over each individual line item, whether it's $100 or $50,000. And I was telling Gary a little bit earlier, being 24 hours ahead of you, and not having Karina gone through this process before like this, is we're regurgitating it twice now. And these girls, Katrina and Karina and Teresa, were up till 9 and 10 o'clock all Labor Day weekend. And we've got month-end closing now, and all this staring at them in the face. And they're tired, okay? And I want to to take up for him here just a little bit. We got to roll with what punches we're given here, so I just want you to know what we're up against. And we're literally 24 hours ahead of you. That's why there's no payroll numbers in there yet, because HR was on vacation last week and couldn't get all that to us in time. So there are a lot of extenuating circumstances, but I wanted you to see the macro, what we're dealing with here.
I have to throw in a few comments. This is the third time I've been through this. This is so far the best execution I've seen, by far and away. I don't think other times, you weren't 24 hours in front of us, you were like 20 minutes in front of us. And, one version we went through, we did not get copies of this. This is all we got. We saw numbers on a screen. The fact that we're getting copies, whether hard copy or,
I
You know,
emailed
you
all
remember
of them
this?
out last year.
well, yeah, I'm talking 2 years ago.
Oh, I
That's when
wasn't doing it
Liz,
2 years
we were doing this with Liz. The second issue, and I want to talk about this, but I forgot, like everything else, is our schedule conflicting with what is, I consider to be very important, the month-end closing? Because we've got like 8 meetings scheduled.
Yeah.
I think that if necessary, I personally would not mind canceling one of those meetings if you guys need the time to do something you have to do every month and may even influence the forecast. Because, I think I always prefer to use August as opposed to September. But one of the issues is, does our meeting schedule conflict with your job requirements? Because I know that regardless of anything we do, you're still gonna be staying until 9 o'clock every night.
Let me tackle that before she gets in there.
Yeah.
We tackled Public Works first, which is absolutely by far the hardest one of all. And golf and everything else is, and even recreation is a piece of cake after this. And so this being the toughest is probably, would you agree with this statement?
This is public utilities, you mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes and no. Yes, it is the hardest one. Yes, I don't have time to do all of this and get everything else done right now. The part that is complicated, and I do not mean this in any bad fashion, so please don't take it, but the involvement that you guys are wanting on a line by line, how did you do the math? What did you do? Everything of it. So that means walking through every piece of what I'm doing. So let me back up and let me just show you guys, just so you guys understand how it has to be broken down. So here's the form that our entire team is given. This comes over the several spreadsheets. This is 4,000 something lines, 3,000 something lines. It's every GL account that is in our system. So it all has zeros. They have to go in and fill in all this information for every GL account that is there, okay? I also provide them the history of what the actuals were, and I threw in the 2021's budget. So they fill all this in. So then, at that point, I have this folder here that has the consolidated pieces. Then I have every division that is in it. So here is the Public Utilities Division. I have to update all of these columns, which I've done. So every time a department changes or they decide to switch something, I've got to go back and say, okay, no, it was PU 10 plus PU 60 and do all my calculations to get just history in, okay? So if you look at all my formulas up here, so I'm pulling in all of that information. I'm going back and I'm tying it back. I'm making sure I haven't missed anything, that everything is picked up. So then I'm able to go in and say, okay, here I've pulled in their budget of what they're proposing. I'm able to review it, but I'm only looking at this on a molecular level. Public Utilities is not the entire picture of this corporation. So when we started this one yesterday and they've got $4 million in their budget, or in their capital, and we knock it, Public Works did, and we knock it down to more of a reasonable amount, it's still not complete because Once I get every one of these divisions, which is what, 8 divisions or so, and 60 departments, give or take, then it all comes into this consolidated summary. And it all flows. Each one of those that I just showed you, so all these departments come over to a summary tab. That summary tab is then brought over to the consolidated tab. Stop. For each one of these. Then I have to also go in, here's that reserve piece we were talking about a moment ago. Then I have to come in and look at it on the consolidated level, along with pulling in all of our liabilities and our balance sheet accounts and all that is not taken into account for on the other side. So, all that being said, yes, there's a lot of work to go into it, but when you guys are wanting to be in every piece of it, you're gonna have to go through it 3 or 4 times, because once I get each one done and I pull that picture together, then I still gotta go back and say, okay, no, we gotta cut another $1.5 million because our total picture doesn't tie out and we don't have enough. So, for the amount of involvement that you guys are wanting, it's not gonna be done. You're not gonna see it until I'm done. But if you want this part, you gotta suffer with me. So.
In a nutshell, what we envisioned when we tackled this was that we would have a budget based on no assessment increase. And then we're gonna have a budget based on assessment increase. And 95% of that is capital, the difference. And I think with the capital, when it's broken out, will be the answer to what you're looking for in justifying what we're gonna spend it on, the assessment increase. The difference is what that is going to be. And that's what we're striving for with these 2 budgets.
So I'll just speak for myself, though. I don't think we want to go line by line on $100 here, $1,000 here, whatever. We just want to know where the big ticket items are or the big changes, period. And to make sure that those make sense to everything that we've been doing since I joined and before Tom's time, to see if there's some consistency there, or we have good rationale behind that so that we can turn to the board and say, their rationale is fully on board. I doubt we'll ever, maybe we'll cross roads, but if we're looking at those things, so, I mean, like I said, I don't know that we need all the line by, or that we want to go line by line. We just need to know where those big items are. That's Jeff Lofgren speaking. I'm not speaking for the committee.
And that's fair enough.
And then the only other question that I have is, we went through a lot of work to go through a 7-year forecast. So when it comes to the 2022 budget, the numbers are already there, or I hope they are, because if you're gonna change them all, then that whole exercise was a waste of time.
No, they're there.
So if that's the case, then,
So like this one,
we-
for example,
yeah,
so this is all their capital for this department, so they've pulled it in. I've gone over and I've looked, I haven't made it all the way through, I haven't.
yeah,
But, okay, on the O&M, this one was deferred in 2025 at $360,000. I know why it's been pushed up. It's one that was recommended to be pushed up. This one, I validated it was high in 2022. They have a 3-year plan. So I am going through to see, does it align with our 7-year O&M?
yeah.
And it shouldn't be on there or without a good justification of not, and so forth.
Yeah,
I'm just-
I'm not questioning whether you're not doing that, I'm just saying, that makes it easier for us to follow, so that we don't have to dig into line by line everything, because we can go back and look at what was in the 2022 budget forecast, and it should look a lot like what we're gonna see here.
But in order to make that summary, break out and make that summary, that's one more step that she'd have to do, other than going line item by line item. So that's just one more piece of the puzzle we've got to add in.
Yeah, speaking personally, I really agree with Jeff. My methodology is probably very different from Jeff. I don't mind seeing the line item by line items. That way I can figure out myself, rightly or wrongly, what the big chunky items are and what the big chunky items change. I'm gonna say Jeff trusts you implicitly. If you tell him, he's gonna believe you. If you tell me, I'm gonna believe you, but I'm a trust but verify guy. So I like to see the numbers myself. 99.9% of the time, I'm gonna agree with the conclusion. You know, now I've seen it for myself. There are certain departments where you just say, well, I really want to try to understand what, and that's me. But otherwise, I agree with Jeff.
So-
This committee only really ultimately cares about the big chunky items.
So
I
can I ask?
agree with both Jeff and Tom. I'm probably a little bit more like Tom, where I like the numbers, but I'll go down like the list like that in about, a minute. I'll say, what about this particular line? That would be my approach.
Right.
I don't necessarily have to have you or anyone to go through and identify those for us. It may be just more of, hey,
Yeah.
what about this one line? Let's talk about it.
And I don't think, I think if you just send it to us, we can come up
Yeah.
with the questions. You don't have
Yeah.
to summarize it for us or spend
I
any
agree.
time catering to us.
Right.
Yeah.
So
The sad news is you have to do all this no matter what.
Yeah.
I do have to do all this no matter what, so,
Yeah.
but that comes back to the question I need to ask. Like I said, I'm not trying to be
You're,
ugly.
you're doing a great job, period.
It is, I know it's the high-level items that are important. That's what makes sense, obviously. In order to get you guys to where you feel like you're involved, my question is, I don't have a complete finished product to send you until I've gone through every piece of it. So if you're wanting the meeting now and the meeting next week, and you want to be able to work through every piece of it, that's what I'm saying, you get stuck having to do it with me. So do you want to, are you okay with you're not gonna get something till a little bit further down the road and it's a more finished product, and then you can ask your questions? Or do I need to work through it every step like this?
That's a really hard question, because for most of us, this is the first time we've ever done it. So we don't know.
For me, I would love to be able to send you guys a more complete product at the end, but then you guys feel like you're not involved and you didn't have time to review and get to go
Yeah,
through
yeah.
every line, so what do you,
Like for this budget here, would you consider that pretty close to complete, other than the wages?
yes.
And then, is it possible, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but heck, I'd be fine. Of course, I've dealt with these a lot, but I can interpret some of this stuff, even if it's just, if you sent to us, even if before a meeting, maybe we don't talk about it at a meeting or something, but just give us a chance to look at it before the end, because unlike maybe these guys, I still have another job. So I tend to not be able to do a whole bunch at the end. If we could spread it out, it'd be better for me, but I'm fine with just you sending them out and not necessarily have to go through it, if that
See,
makes sense.
last year we went through every single one.
Yeah.
We had the staff here to go through each piece of it.
Do we
Now,
need to?
we did it all at the end, which seemed to be an issue as well, because we spent half the day and just had knocked out one division after the other. That seemed to cause a problem, and you guys wanted to be able to have more time for each one.
So what is the timeline we're working on? Is there a?
6 October.
Yeah, if you look at the,
Okay.
okay, why don't we take a little time off? Everybody in their little packets has the timeline. And this was done in 6:30. My guess is it is somewhat out of date. I enumerated each of the boxes, just so I can just say, if you look at line number 6, it says, review recommended fee updates with F&P committee. We've done that. Hopefully, once I get out this memo, we'll kind of put a bow tie on that. The target date was August 11th through 1st through the 15th. We're obviously a little behind, no big surprise. The next line item was interesting, finalized budget, including revenue, operation expenses, and capital expenditures. Obviously, we are not completed by August 15th. As John said so nicely, they're about 24 hours ahead of us. So it looks like we're the line item 9, review proposed budget with F&P committee, consolidate and departmental review, September 1st through 14th. Today's the 8th. We have meetings galore through the rest of the month. We'll see how that comes up, but as Karina said, everybody's working their butts off to produce this.
So
I assume that that you are not going to present to the budget, to the board prior to October 6th. So that, October 6th
That was
is like the
changed.
magic date. Excuse me?
that was changed after
Right.
our meeting, 2 meetings ago.
Right, right. So at this point, October 6th, I think, is the magic date. Karina goes to the board with the complete package, and we, I think, are targeting our report to the board October 6th.
Okay, and so Karina, in terms of your working timeline internally, and I know it's kind of a moving target, when would you expect this to be basically done, except for whatever input that this group would give you? I mean, if you had no outside pressures or influence, when would be a reasonable date for it to be?
I would say within 2 weeks, I should have it completely done, and that's where I was trying to say, is we're going through division by division, and I pull it all back together. There's still gonna be some changes and modifications that would need to be done. But within 2 weeks, I should be able to get everything there. But then we can do it like we did last year, and then is that something okay, or?
Well, if it were finished in 2 weeks, then that would give this group a week to kick it around and ask questions and make changes if needed.
They usually
But I'm
want
hearing
more.
that didn't work well in the past. I'm not sure why, but my preference would be to wait till it's done, and then have an opportunity to review it and then come together for maybe 2 or 3 2-hour meetings to kind of walk through whatever we need to walk through, and then be ready to present to the board by October 6th. I personally don't feel a need to be in the sausage making, but, you know, if others want to, then that's obviously your prerogative.
Yeah.
As a non-CPA, I look at the number of meetings scheduled and say, you don't need to waste your time with those meetings myself. And to me, I'm satisfied with this, that we can kind of discuss internally. Now granted, I'm not the financial wizard here, but we can discuss it a little bit internally, maybe come back together in 2 weeks and ask questions, some of which you probably resolved already, and go from there. Is that not plausible?
Well, I haven't sent the whole thing out. I think,
We'll send
I
it
think
as you
what-
have it
I think what I was
prepared.
suggesting
Is
is,
when
I
it's
prefer to
done.
wait till it's baked, the cake's basically baked. I don't feel a need to look at the ingredients along the way, especially if it might change at the end, because then I've potentially wasted time with something that's not gonna be relevant. But, you know, I'm brand new and I'm not even official, so my voice probably doesn't count very much. So whatever the rest of the experienced people want to do, I'll go along with, but those are my 2 cents.
I'm fine, probably either way, you know, whether we get a piecemeal along the way. I feel your pain because I'm in there too, daily basis, not right now because our budget is a little bit later on, but I'm working on it and making changes and stuff like that, so the sooner I can get more information corrected up front or comments up front, the better for you. But I get your point also, we shouldn't be in the ingredients, so to speak, and more high level. So sometimes gotta get off my tactical strategies and just think corporate strategy. So I'm fine either way, but
My only question though is, and I can go either way, and I'm happy to do it at the end. My only question is if we do it at the end, so we say 2 weeks from now, all right, so 2.5 weeks from now, we get together for a couple, 3 meetings or whatever, to go over that. It seems to me though, all we're gonna be able to do at that point is look at it. Because making an input and you turning around and presenting something on the 6th doesn't seem,
Well, let's ask the question. We've got, 2 weeks would be the 22nd. and then there'd be 2 more weeks before the 6th. And so the question is, you know.
That's the question I'm asking, is that enough
Yeah,
time?
I mean, it seems to me like that would be enough time for us to digest the information, ask our questions, and if we need to make some changes, make some changes. But maybe not. I mean, if you tell me that 2 weeks
Really,
once
do you think that that's worth
isn't.
it?
I can do
If that's not
it.
enough time, then it's not enough time. But
It's easy enough for me to go in and make the changes. So if you guys feel like you can review it in the 2 weeks, and that you've done a thorough enough review to feel comfortable with it within that 2 weeks, I think that's the
Yeah,
bigger question.
I would think if we,
I can make
if
those
we got it in
changes.
2 weeks, and then we had a series of however many meetings we needed, 2 or 3, to kind of go through it as a group, take a week to do that, and then you have a week to incorporate whatever changes we come up with. To me, that sounds doable, but, you know, I also wouldn't want to put us behind the 8 ball, so. And I haven't been through the process here, so I don't know if what is reasonable somewhere else works here. So,
To me, that's reasonable, but Tom, you've been through it before.
Yeah, my first reaction is, if you just look at how hard we made the fees, which is about 1,000,000 times easier than the budget, it's hard. It's hard for this group or any other group to tackle a complex issue. And like I said, the budget is way more complex than fees. And tackle it in an efficient manner. We're simply not a very efficient group. I truly hope that you can put everything together in 2 weeks. That would be great. I am concerned that if you miss that date even by a little bit, and we're committed to just a 2-week process of reviews, that puts tremendous pressure on us, and, you know, maybe that's tough luck. Maybe we just eat the pressure. I agree that 2 weeks may be reasonable for a review, but we also have to write a report. And I've seen us put together reports, and holy cow, just look at the.
The 2-page policy.
Yeah, the reserves policy. I look at that and said, Lord in heaven, that's a bunny.
so what's magical about October 6th? I know it's on a piece
The
of paper here.
board discussion session.
Pardon me?
The board discussion session.
Yeah.
So that they can vote the third Wednesday.
Okay, so that's like a publicly scheduled event, so
Right.
it's not an arbitrary target that we could push back a week.
Right.
Correct.
And also, it's tied to the board approval on October 20th, which
So
is their.
it's relative, it's a hard deadline.
Yeah, it's pretty hard, yeah.
Pretty hard. And originally, the board was gonna be briefed before we made an input, which wasn't gonna work, so now we've aligned them together, but kind of forces, that date's not really movable, and we have to have our input in.
I mean, I truly see the arguments, and, I mean, I'm sympathetic to it, but when I have looked at this committee and every other committee that I've been on, putting yourself on a tight timeline, you're really taking some, you know, big fat risks.
So what are we asking from management
That's a good
over the
question.
series of the next few meetings? Because honestly, what we did today doesn't do a whole lot for me.
Yeah, it does a whole lot for me. I love this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the fees are going up by the 5.8%, you know, that's kind of what we expected, and everything else looks like it's kind of in line, and, you know, so, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's totally unhelpful, but, you know,
Yeah, I mean, in my world, if Karina produces this at whatever level of comfort she's at, I just really need
I can
to
send
see the
you,
numbers. I need to know what's in there and what's not in there, what you're still working on. And I need to know the big chunky goals that we're really shooting at. Those are the 3 inputs. And then I can look at all this stuff and, you know, drive myself crazy, which is actually a specialty. But, you know, that's what I like. That's how I process information. And I truly understand, everybody processes information differently. And I mean, I'll be the first to admit, this 10 trillion meetings between now and the next 3 weeks, is that really beneficial? Are you, probably it helps me more than other people because that's just, I just wallow in numbers. And, that's a failing. But.
So to move forward versus just keep going round and round, I would say, I would propose or a change to our schedule and that we don't do anything until the week of the 20th of September. We have a meeting on the 20th with whatever information that we have, and then the 22nd, and keep adding days the week of the 20th and the 27th versus what we currently have scheduled, which is basically a meeting on
Next
the
Wednesday, or next Monday,
13th
Wednesday.
and 15th, those two meetings that we don't have, because in reality, the staff won't be able to give us a good enough product for us to be able to debate. And instead, we start the week of the 20th with whatever they have.
That doesn't mean that we can't get you what we have ahead of that. If
Yeah.
it's piecemeal, they'll like that, to get it for Tom.
Yeah, as long as you're comfortable with
Well,
sending
yeah,
it.
I mean, we're not gonna send that, we're not comfortable, but that might be a little give and take here, that we can get piecemeal to you.
As long as you guys understand that there could still be changes that would come out.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's gonna be changes no matter what we do until the last minute. That always happens.
Okay,
I have no problem sending you guys this format like I sent you today, as soon as we go over it with each department. That's exactly what we did in this scenario. And I will just highlight what is still in draft form. And like I said, as long as you guys acknowledge, hey, we may still end up having to cut $1 million out, or whatever the case is, when I get the picture together.
And we're
I don't
doing
have a
golf
problem with
tomorrow.
that.
We're doing golf tomorrow, so it's gonna be ready, fairly
I
quickly.
thought you were going golf tomorrow.
And then Monday, like recreation, but we're on it, we're just a few days away.
Okay.
all right, so I suggest we need to leave Karina alone so she can do her job. Now, how we come up, we're gonna come up with questions. We each have a different question. The task to me is how do we do that without interfering with the workday? That's a question.
Mhm. Well, what I'm hearing is, at least for next Monday and next Wednesday, there's no requirement for Karina to produce anything, and there's no intent on this committee to review anything like that. If she has stuff to send us, she sends us stuff, that's fine. And then, as Jeff said, our next scheduled budget review meeting is the 20th, and we'll just see where we are there.
I think that makes sense to me.
But it sounds to me like, and, I've kind of lost count, but I think, today's the 22nd. Okay, today's Wednesday, 15, 26. So if good things happen, the 22nd, you will be at a point where we can see not only a hopefully somewhat completed budget, but also the roll-ups. Because there's no point in rolling everything up without all the parts being somewhat completed as best we can. So as far as budget review, the 20th, as far as kind of the big roll-up, the 22nd. And those will just be the numbers, it won't be the budget packet.
No, that would be pretty much all of it.
Well, the budget packet it has all the verbiage
Yeah.
surrounding it. So
That-
the
we need your
22nd
input
is
For that.
a preliminary draft of the entire budget packet. Okay, that's a hard target.
Okay, so then can I just throw out, I mean, if that's when it's produced, we haven't had a chance to review it. So having a meeting on the 20th or the 22nd, we're just getting it then.
Well, we'll see what we get. I mean, Yeah, I don't know what we're gonna get the 20th. I understand what the hard target is to the 22nd. Yeah, you're right.
But
I'm not
let's just
exactly-
say, okay, so here's your packet.
Mhm.
Okay, what are we gonna do in the meeting?
Essentially, at that point, okay, at some point, we have to come up with, presumably identify issues that we feel are of concern. But if we're getting stuff in the meantime, maybe preliminarily, we can start compiling lists of things that kind of look funny or deserve
What I would
questions.
like to see is like the 20th or the 22nd, I would like to see management walk us through, yeah, we're seeing it for the first time, maybe, unless we have an opportunity to get it a day or two ahead, but have management walk us through, starting with the high level, and then kind of peeling down into the detail as much as we need to for us to get a big picture understanding of the package. And then that gives us a week or so to digest that and dig in on our own and ask whatever follow-up questions we need to ask. I mean, that's what I would think might be a good process, but.
I was just trying to understand and set expectations so that people don't have wrong expectations walking out of here.
And, I mean, again, once again, I mean, our goal is to have a written report to the board with a hard recommendation, or a hard set of recommendations, and probably lots of other stuff. But, yeah, I mean, we don't have a lot of track to run on as far as what our recommendations to the board should look like. I mean, we've done it once, and I wrote it, and I have some issues with what I wrote, but it's never been seriously reviewed by anybody.
So we've got a document we can start with, though, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So if you get the package, if we presented something on the 20th or the 22nd, that gives us, we could come back, let's say, on the 29th, gives us a full week to
That's
digest
what I was trying to
everything.
point out,
Right.
is the
And-
the week of the 29th, we ought to have a series of meetings,
Right.
at least amongst ourselves, to write the report, identify issues, maybe from time to time, reach out to Karina and the staff and say, hey, can you look into this, or what's the answer to that? Is what I'm saying. Trying to do that on the 20th, she's not ready yet. On the 22nd, that's the first time it is ready. It just seems like that's not the time when you are going to have enough knowledge to be able to ask intelligent questions and to have analyzed it and thought about it and be prepared to have constructive conversation versus just long diatribes, which don't really get us very far.
I mean, I think if we're getting, these unofficial updates prior to the 20th, we may have a decent basis for having an intelligent discussion.
Yeah, but to Gary's point,
But I don't
we
know.
just don't need to bother
Oh,
with
yeah,
those
yeah,
right
yeah.
now.
I mean,
Or up to the 20th.
right, there's no reason for her to come with her PC with all kinds of stuff on it and put it up on the screen, and for us to try to follow what's going on. I agree with that. It's just absolutely something. Okay, we've been at this for 2.5 hours.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'm just going to interject to make sure that I try to get minutes right for a change. Basically, what we're saying is we won't have meetings until the 22nd. You'll send us stuff.
I didn't say that.
Okay, well, we.
Karina will not be like front and center
Okay,
until probably at the earliest, the 20th, certainly the 22nd.
okay.
I think 20th is a touch base, see where we are. I mean,
And we'll do
it's
it.
possible on the 20th, we'll look at the 22nd and say, holy cow, I'm not gonna make it. Then what? I'm
Let me add
seriously
another.
proposing, we will meet next Monday because we didn't finish a couple of conversations.
Okay.
And there are a couple of other things I wanna talk about that we haven't even touched on.
But we won't do the agenda as published earlier. It will not involve budget review.
Right,
Other than
I think we agreed
what you
there
send
is
us and us
no,
talking among ourselves.
yeah, there is no formal budget review
Okay.
scheduled for next Monday or Wednesday. which is the original agenda.
Right.
I think we're all in agreement with that. I mean, so my plan is to have a meeting, because there are agenda topics, but Karina can participate or not participate. Actually, she does have to participate, but it'll be different agenda topics.
Okay.
Okay. So, looking at the agenda today, it seems to me that we are done with the agenda topic that says initial review 2022 budget, which is, basically, we didn't get far. We really talked about the process as a whole. Okay. The next action item, okay, not quite done with it. We were talking about the budget guidance, as have been previously pointed out. We were kind of late to the dance with that baby. I am trying to put together all the various comments. I think at this point I've got all the outstanding comments that I think I'm gonna get. Karina said she was gonna take last look at it, and maybe have some
The only
comments.
thing that we changed was the email that I sent over the weekend regarding removal of some of the fee stuff, so, or the utility rate fee, because it's in there
Right.
as the 4%.
Right,
That
right.
needs back to the 5.8, as long as you guys are in agreement, and that's the only thing I'm aware of.
So what I'm going to do, in the spirit of the last minutes, is I'm gonna take a shot at coming up with another version of that, or another draft of it, get it out. I would like to discuss that Monday. Okay. Action items, I think the only other action item which we had kind of tabled earlier was probably continued discussion on the reserves policy. And the only action item I heard was that Larry and Becky somehow need to get together and incorporate her comments. Other than that, I think Karina said, as you do your department reviews one by one, you'll get them out, it'll look like that. I would like to know, basically just what isn't in there yet? And then, like I said, big chunky goals. What are you trying to accomplish from a kind of a high level? Is there sort of a big unified version of that, or is it just gonna come out piece by piece?
So they have it on their summary tab, of which
Okay.
I didn't pull up, but that's what comes over in the budget. That's the first
Okay.
tab of this spreadsheet.
Okay.
I didn't send it because we haven't updated it yet.
Okay.
But it's taking that budget guidance that goes through,
Mhm.
and then where it applies and specifically how they're handling it.
Right.
And that will come out when I send it all to you guys.
Okay, when I looked at the budget table, they were probably more or less the first 4 line items, sort of, kind of circuitously mentioned as some kind of a envisioning process, setting goals. But I assume at this point, there's no one unified, here's what we're gonna do thing.
We've got the board issued goals for
Just-
2021 that we're applying as far as for 2022, because they're
Okay.
really more of a long-term strategic goal anyways.
Yes, there is. We've got a sheet.
So that will be part of it, and then that kind of feeds into what you've got as far as budget guidance.
Okay.
Is that it?
The first thing you mentioned, would it be possible to distribute that to this committee? Or
Yeah.
is,
But
As soon as we finalize it with Joni, yes.
oh, that would be great. To me, that would be great. Okay. So that, I'm requesting that. Other than that, are there
Tom,
any
can I-
other action items or commitments or?
Well, again, maybe an inappropriate time to bring it up, but I keep seeing in Digest and so forth, and I think it's an important policy, that the F&P will be involved with the policy directing future boards to
Yeah,
maybe
Larry's
have
gonna I talked to Larry about that, and Larry's gonna bring it forward to him when he gets back.
hot damn, thank
All right,
you.
Don.
Okay.
Now, thank you, Kathy, because it's on my list too. When I was listening to Joanne talk, the board has been very clear they are going to have a policy
Yeah, that's
on this
coming as soon
assessment
as
fund
Larry
and
gets
said
back.
that this committee is working on it along with the board member. I'm going like, whoa.
So as far as action items, I'm going to try to finalize the draft of the letter to, on fees, 2022 fees. I'll distribute that as soon as I clean it up, but I think that should not take too long. My big fear is like, I just whiffed on one or two items, so do not hesitate to tell me if I whiffed on something. With that, well, that was a tough meeting. We're gonna go around the table. Everybody should have an opportunity to comment on anything they feel like, particularly with respect to this committee. With that, I'm just gonna start with John and go around the table.
Good.
You good?
Good, I gotta go.
Nothing else.
I'm good.
Fine.
You just put my mind at ease, because this has really been bothering me. This committee is responsible for a policy that I didn't know anything was being done coming out of this.
Yeah, it's already drafted. Larry's gonna bring it to the committee here shortly.
Like I said, you put my mind at ease. Thank you.
Okay, sounds like we're all burnt out. Get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?